Right now in current news, vaccine concerns. European countries are dropping AstraZeneca's shot amid blood clot worries. Plus, vaccine testing. Moderna is now holding a trial to see how effective their shot is in children. Migrant crisis. Teens caught along the border are now being bused to a convention center in Dallas.
The women who are breaking ground in wildlife conservation throughout history and today. I'm Jessica Easthope with how Mother Nature and all of us are benefiting from their accomplishments.
Good evening, I'm Emily Druby. A growing number of countries have suspended injections of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine to investigate some possibly dangerous side effects. Though not in use in the U.S., the fears are resonating throughout Europe. Italians seen here rushing to get the AstraZeneca vaccine before the country suspended its usage. They're one of many countries across Europe that have either fully or partially suspended the shot after reports of blood clots and abnormal bleeding leading to serious illness and even death. The shot has not been approved for usage in the U.S. World leaders say the stoppage is a precautionary measure until the incidents are reviewed by experts, but public health experts and the drug maker claims there's no evidence the vaccine increases chances of forming blood clots. The World Health Organization is backing them up.
This does not necessarily mean these events are linked to vaccination, but it's routine practice to investigate them. And it shows that the surveillance system works and that effective controls are in place.
Blood clots are a thickening blob of blood that can affect circulation. They're not a side effect we would normally see.
Blood clots following a vaccination are not common.
But as Dr. Robert Tabali, infectious disease expert with the Catholic Medical Association, explains, in general, they're relatively consistent, occurring in up to 600,000 Americans yearly. AstraZeneca says out of 17 million vaccinations, they've seen about 37 reports of clots.
And that's a very low percentage rate. That's very close to the rate that where blood clots occur in the general population.
Some vaccines, for example, the mumps, have been linked to low levels of platelets. That's also been reported in those receiving several types of the COVID shot, but there's no definite link there yet either. Dr. Tabali explains much of what's happening in Europe is traced back to certain batches of the vaccine, so they'll likely look to see if there's any variance in the production. He adds that the investigation will likely be a comparison too.
They'll compare patients that receive the vaccine to the general population and see if the rates are significantly higher in vaccinated patients.
Again, the U.S. is not using this vaccine right now, but the drug maker was expected to apply for authorization in the next few weeks. In Europe, they're one of 3 vaccines in use. This is just the latest blow to the European vaccine rollout, which has been plagued with hurdles like shortages for a while now. AstraZeneca and its partner Oxford University have faced scrutiny in the past. In September, the trial was stopped because of an adverse reaction in one of the trial volunteers. 2 months later, scientists said they made a major mistake in dosing during its phase 3 trial. Some study participants were only given half doses. The efficacy of the vaccine dropped significantly after the correction was made, down from 90% to 62%. The original error was not reported in AstraZeneca's original findings. Over a dozen countries in Europe have stopped or temporarily halted use of the AstraZeneca vaccine. The latest, Sweden and Latvia, who announced it early Tuesday. The European Medicines Agency is set to hold an emergency meeting Thursday to advise on possible next steps. The first group of children has received Moderna's vaccine. The company is holding a pediatric clinical trial. About 6,700 children in the U.S. and Canada between the ages of 6 months and 11 years old are taking part in the Moderna trial. They are getting 2 doses of the vaccine, but some children will be getting a placebo. As more members of the White House staff get vaccinated, they are ending daily COVID tests. The White House still requires its staff to wear masks, social distance, and go through regular testing. Prior to the change, only those who were coming in contact with the president, vice president, or other senior level staff were getting tested daily. With vaccination efforts ramping up, Mayor Bill de Blasio is praising the city for administering close to 3 million vaccine doses, a milestone building up to de Blasio's goal of 5 million vaccinations by June.
We just have to stay ahead of these variants. But I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful you're going to see more progress, and you're certainly seeing progress in terms of reduced hospitalizations and, thank God, reduced deaths.
As more students return to in-person learning, the city is emphasizing testing efforts in classrooms. Coming up, we'll speak with Dr. Kate Walsh-Choucheret about the pandemic and its effect 1 year since New York City closed its schools. She says loneliness, uncertainty, anxiety, and depression are all on the rise for young people. Police are on the lookout for a pair of shooters who gunned down a church-going mom of 2 in Queens. Police say Gudule Valinas was caught in the line of fire while running errands in Astoria Saturday night. Valinas was shot in the head while the 2 men were firing at each other in the streets and was later pronounced dead. Her father-in-law says she was a server at her Catholic church and believes she's in heaven now. Her death is part of a rising trend of gun violence in the city. Last month, there were 400 gun arrests, a 63.9% spike over February of 2020. Shooting incidents surged to 77, a 75% increase over last year. More than 2 months after the violent attack on the U.S. Capitol, 2 men are charged with spraying Capitol police officers in the face with some kind of toxic chemical agent. One of those officers, Brian Sicknick, died the next day. Brett Conway has a look at what's next in this case, including the possibility of upgraded charges.
January 6th. Hundreds of rioters stormed the U.S. Capitol. Prosecutors say among them, 32-year-old Julian Ellie Cater and 39-year-old George Pierre Tanios. They're each facing 9 counts for what investigators say happened that day.
It's clear that it took a long time for law enforcement to get to this point.
The Brian Sicknick case has been a priority for investigators. According to a criminal complaint, the men were, quote, working together to assault law enforcement officers with an unknown chemical substance by spraying officers directly in the face and eyes. One of those 3 officers was Sicknick. Police say he went back to a command center and collapsed. He died the next day. Cater and Tanios faced judges on Monday. Cater's attorney says he plans to plead not guilty. Tanios will have a hearing Thursday on whether he'll stay in jail before trial. Prosecutors say they worry he could run or obstruct justice if he's let out, and that he's a danger to the community. Right now, they're charged with assault, not murder. Investigators didn't say in the complaint whether the exposure to the spray directly caused Sicknick's death.
They are keenly focused on trying to find the right evidence to fully understand how he lost his life. What was that, singular moment? We may not get to that.
And if they can't, prosecutors still have a powerful tool to make their case.
You are also going to have 2 officers who are going to say, I was sprayed in the face with a chemical substance.
I'm Britt Conway reporting.
The situation at the U.S.-Mexico border grows. More than 2,000 migrant teenagers will be housed in a convention center in Dallas. Homeland Security officials say the Kay Bailey Hutchinson building will be used on a temporary basis. It will shelter young men who cross the border without parents or guardians. Homeland Security is asking FEMA to help transfer children out of Border Patrol custody and into shelters. This as officials see an increase in smuggler activity around the border.
The smugglers are agile and quick, and word of mouth gets through, and they are exploiting people's hope and desperation. But it's important that we make sure children are moved out of Border Patrol stations.
President Biden has already pledged to raise the refugee cap. His administration has proposed increasing the number of refugees admitted into the country to 62,500. That's more than 4 times the 15,000 limit placed by former President Donald Trump. 3 Conference of Catholic Bishops chairmen are supporting a measure to protect faith-based foster agencies. It prevents any government from taking action against a child welfare service that makes decisions based on moral or religious principles. Some states have excluded agencies for believing children should be placed with a married mother and father. The bishop saying, quote, the Inclusion Act would remedy this unjust discrimination and maximize the benefit to thousands of children in need by enabling all foster care and adoption providers to serve the needs of parents and children in a manner consistent with the provider's religious beliefs and moral convictions. A group of Catholic priests is starting one of the largest efforts by an institution to atone for slavery. The leader of the Jesuit Conference of Priests are vowing to raise $100 million to benefit the descendants of enslaved people. According to a series of New York Times articles, the order relied on slave labor and sales for more than a century to sustain clergy and finance day-to-day operations of churches and schools. The money raised will go into a new foundation established in partnership with the descendants. The Jesuits have already deposited $15 million. We continue to celebrate Women's History Month. Urban Park Rangers on Staten Island are highlighting the big impact women have had on wildlife conservation. Jessica Easthope was at Brookfield Park with more on the women working to protect the animals that live there.
Let us be protectors of creation, protectors of God's plan inscribed in nature. Pope Francis said that during his second encyclical, Laudato Si. And here on Staten Island, the protectors of nature are fierce.
And we are actually allowed to, if need be, make arrests. See the red-winged blackbird?
Jenna Lewandowski and Irina Werner are urban park rangers, responsible for keeping people and wildlife safe.
If someone sees an animal they believe might be sick or injured, they can call us and we'll come out, transport that animal to a wildlife rehabilitator or an animal care center.
Rangers Jenna and Irina say the fight for representation in wildlife conservation has been an uphill battle. But in New York City, women are making great strides. Right now, women make up 47% of urban park rangers. The rangers say women who have broken ground in wildlife conservation in the past inspire their passions. Rachel Carson was a conservationist whose research on pesticides like DDT helped launch the Environmental Protection Agency.
This was a Superfund site, and that's something done through the EPA. So thanks to her, we have the EPA, and this park was also possible.
Ranger Jenna says she's been inspired by Rosalie Barrow Edge, a suffragist who became an advocate for species preservation and studying birds in their habitats instead of killing them.
If she had the boldness to stand up for women's rights at that time, she had no problem standing up for conservation and wildlife.
Pope Francis's emphasis on the environment has brought preservation issues and climate change to the surface. Brookfield Park on Staten Island was once a landfill, but now it's a sanctuary.
In the last 4 years that it's been open, we have been seeing a large amount of different types of animals coming back, and even plant life as well.
As the church has made the environment a priority, new generations of women in wildlife conservation have their futures mapped out by those who came before them. It's up to them to take flight. On Staten Island, Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
Celebrating Literacy Month, Catholic schools in Brooklyn and Queens are taking part in the 3rd annual Great Diocesan Read-Along. On Tuesday, Monsignor Kieran Harrington joined the students at St. Sebastian Academy to read one of his favorites, Charlotte's Web.
And some of the themes that it deals with are themes that we are dealing with right now. So it deals with change.
The Great Diocesan Read Aloud is happening all week, and on Thursday, our very own Christine Persichetti will be reading to the students at Holy Child Jesus Catholic Academy. Still to come here on Currents News, we speak with a mental health expert about the unseen toll the pandemic has had on children. Plus, for some refugees fleeing the Syrian civil war, getting out of the country is not where their troubles ended. And why Sri Lanka has banned burqas and shut down Islamic schools.
There are now some big changes to the tablet website. You can get personalized access to the Catholic news you value. Sign up for free at thetablet.org.
Today marks 1 year since New York City schools shut down with the uncertainty of a reopening date. Catholic schools in the Diocese of Brooklyn have been back and operating since September, yet New York City public schools have had a rocky time getting back open and staying open. 152 across the city are still currently closed. To talk more about how this affects kids, we're joined by Dr. Kate Wall-Souchere, licensed marriage and family therapist and a member of the Catholic Psychotherapy Association. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Emily. I'm so happy to be here.
And we're so happy to have you. Now, kids have been largely unaffected from health-wise from COVID, but the pandemic has brought so much uncertainty. I mean, kids are spending their year not knowing if their school's going to be shut down the next day or not. I mean, how is this affecting them psychologically and emotionally?
Well, what I have seen, Emily, with students and young people that I work with in my office is that they are prone to anxiousness on just a given moment, a snap of a finger, they can have anxiousness be ignited for them. And of course, what we know is that anxiety and depression are two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, there's just so much uncertainty right now. Now, one of the big things kids are missing out on are those big life milestones, the graduations, the proms. These are events that are so important for development. Is this something that will affect them in the long run too?
Well, and what I am finding is that they're not able to go back and to redo that. They maybe dreamt about getting a prom dress or going with their friends or going out for dinner, and that day has passed, and they're not going to be able to go back and do it again. And so, for young people to be able to come to terms with that and grasp what that means for them, and to be able to say, it's all right. I'm going to have other good things happen to me. This is sad. I'm really, really sad about this, and it's going to be all right. It's hard.
It sounds so hard. I cannot even imagine. And so from what I've seen personally reporting on education, there's a lot less social interaction in schools now. And how important is the social aspect of school? Has the pandemic affected, the suicide rates in kids and teens at all?
Well, it has. And one of the interesting things is because people are not going to emergency rooms as much, what we're finding is that the number of young people who maybe have thought about self-harm or who have attempted self-harm, we may not actually be counting them. And the number has been on the rise for teen suicide since 2000.
So how can we help those kids who are struggling? I know you have a few tips for us, right?
The number one is remember to breathe, because breathing interrupts the vagus nerve, which is rushing to the brain with all kinds of chemicals that cause us to panic. So breathing interrupts that and just reminds us, take a moment, push the pause button, it's going to be okay. Remember to laugh. If we can laugh, we do release chemicals in our bodies that help us to feel more positive. Talk kindly to our young people and softly. Try to lower our voices, try to smile at our young people. And then lastly, just remind them to think positive and positively focus on the positive things that have happened. And we ourselves have to remember to do that too.
Yes, we can all use a little bit more positivity in our life during this time. Now, Dr. Kate Walsh-Soucheray, licensed marriage and family therapist and member of the Catholic Psychotherapy Association. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for those great tips.
Thank you, Emily. Have a wonderful day. God bless you. And God bless all of your listeners. Thank you.
The Catholic charity Caritas is launching a campaign to help kids in war-torn Syria. The drive, called Tomorrow is in Our Hands, hopes to bolster educational opportunities for Syrian children. According to Caritas, the COVID pandemic pushed 50% of kids out of the system, meaning 2/3 of them do not go to school and are at risk of falling into child labor. The campaign also hopes to provide medical and humanitarian aid. As refugees flee the war and violence in Syria, their problems continue even after leaving the country. Many live in poverty with little to eat. Claudia Torres has one woman's story as she deals with financial hardship and emotional despair.
10 years into the war in Syria, the repercussions of the conflict continue to be felt, especially by those who managed to escape with their lives. One of those people is 35-year-old Hala, who has been living in Lebanon with her family for 10 years. But instead of finding fresh starts and unbridled opportunities, they found financial hardship and emotional despair. The situation is very difficult. We've been put through a lot of difficult circumstances. Talking about it is no longer useful. This affected our bodies and we got sick. It got inside of us. The children were affected and depressed.
This uncertainty about how you're going to survive today, tomorrow, and not even thinking about the week after is a daily inner emergency that people are living through.
And theirs is not an isolated case, as even Pope Francis pointed out at the past Sunday Angelus.
Un numero imprecisato di morti e feriti, milioni di profughi, migliaia di scomparsi, distruzioni, violenze di ogni genere e immani sofferenze per tutta la popolazione.
The UNHCR reports that there are about 5.6 million Syrian refugees living in neighboring countries today, and it doesn't seem that their exile will end anytime soon.
That was Claudia Torres reporting. The decade-long war has left thousands dead, including children. According to UNICEF, more than 5 million children have been born in Syria since the violence began in 2011, 90% of them needing humanitarian assistance. Sri Lanka is thinking about banning the wearing of burqas and shutting down more than 1,000 Islamic schools. The country's minister is calling for the ban on national security grounds. The wearing of a burqa in the majority Buddhist nation was temporarily banned in 2019 after a series of bombings on Easter Sunday. The country says it's just a proposal and needs time to go over it. Regional allies are criticizing the proposed ban, saying it violates religious freedom. Coming up on Currents News, what's in a name? The huge honor for a hospital security guard that helped deliver a baby. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number, 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. Giving a new meaning to curbside delivery, a woman gives birth outside the hospital. And now she's showing thanks to the stranger who helped deliver her baby in a very touching way. Heidi Wigdahl has her story.
1 week ago, Lacey Gonzalez held her baby for the first time, something that happened before even entering the hospital.
I remember the whole ride, my husband kept saying, the water hasn't broke yet. We're going to be okay. We'll make it. We'll make it.
Lacey says her water didn't break until the head came out. At that point, she was in the van outside Hennepin County Medical Center. Her husband ran inside for help.
I asked him the same question that I ask every labor patient that comes in. Are they actively pushing? And this one time, he said yes.
Tiffany Owen, an HCMC security officer, came to the rescue.
The whole time I just kept looking at her eyes, and all I could see was courage, and I knew everything was going to be okay.
I was by myself for what seemed like eternity, but it was just, a minute or two. She continued to push. I caught the baby when she was born.
Medical staff arrived and brought Lacey and her baby to the ER before being brought to the birth center. On that day, Officer Owen became an honorary midwife. She's also a mom.
I would say my experiences best helped her more than any of my training that I went through.
The Gonzalez family welcomed a baby girl named Tiffany, the same name as the officer who delivered her. It means manifestation of God.
One of the most amazing moments of my life.
That was Heidi Wigdahl reporting. Both mom and baby are doing just fine. And that is Currents News. I'm Emily Druby. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.